Ha 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 ha. What the fuck is up, my little cats and kittens, and welcome to another episode of the OVER Sharra Podcast. I am your host, Shara Coley, and I'm going to be doing what I do best, which is oversharing about whatever the fuck I want to, because here on the OVER Sharra Podcast, we believe, that oversharing is caring. So let's get into it. Well, what a year it's been already, folks. We're 11 days in, and I don't know about you, but this last few days have been pretty stressful and pretty anxiety-filling for me. I saw this post the other day that said, "Sorry if I seem anxious, I've just been paying attention," and that's exactly how I feel. And a lot of what we're going to talk about today is how to deal with times like this when everything on the outside world and everything that you're consuming feels really high anxiety and anxiety inducing and stressful and heavy and all of these things, and how to realistically navigate some relationships and boundaries within those relationships that doesn't necessarily include completely cutting people out and cutting people off when you have a difference of opinion. Because here's the reality is that sometimes, and a lot of times, especially for me, I grew up mostly in the South, and I do not hold a lot of the beliefs and values of traditional Southern people, traditional Southern values. I'm not religious. I have been religious. And here's the thing. I've actually evolved from being on that side of it, right? And seeing how much your environment impacts how you view the world and how you arrive at what you believe and what you arrive at what you think. And my mom always says I went off to college and became a liberal, but the reality is I don't even completely identify with the liberal side. I find myself to be really in the middle of things, but I have empathy, I feel like I just have empathy for humanity, and I don't understand how more people don't, and how it's become such this polarizing divide between the left and the right, and this argument of justifying people dying on both sides because of they disagreed, or celebrating, this because they had different beliefs and they said that they didn't, that they would have made their child give birth if they hypothetically were to get impregnated at 10. There's just all this bullshit where I'm just like, how did we arrive here? And I mean, I'm not really asking that question because I understand how we arrived here. I really do. I think it's just sometimes my brain can't wrap around that there are people, and so many people in the world, that just quite literally lack human empathy. They just lack general empathy for other people if they have a difference of opinion, or they disagree, or they make them angry. And that is where I can't understand how anybody can operate that way, because I don't operate that way. And it makes me a little bit, I guess, mentally, not naive's not the word, but just I'm unable to comprehend how somebody else can't feel the way that I do about other human beings, regardless of their political affiliation, their religious beliefs, etc. Can I get fiery and maybe pop off on you? Sure. Am I ever going to be like, you deserve to die? Absolutely not. And I don't care how much I hate you. I would never wish that on you. Even the people who, have done really horrible things in the world, I would never wish their same treatment that they've done to other people onto them. That's just not how I operate. That's not how my mind thinks. And if you think that that's radical and liberal, then so be it. You can call me a radical liberal. I don't care. That's just how I feel about humanity. So today we are going to be talking about how to protect yourself a little bit, shield yourself a little bit from the outside world, how to set some realistic boundaries that don't include cutting people out, or that maybe do include cutting people out, and what that line can look like. And just some real world shit. But before we get there, I'm going to give you a little bit of background, because like I said, I do feel like I have a decent perspective on both sides of the coin, because I was raised in a household with, I would say, a mom who is pretty traditional, very traditional values. She's religious. whenever we did go to church for the little bit that I can remember when I was very young, we stopped going as a family and like with my mom and stuff like that. When I was pretty young, I would say by the time I was like 8 years old, we weren't even in church anymore. But I do have some memories of going to church sometimes. We went to like very boring, just like Methodist church. We went to a Baptist church for a little bit, and I remember there was drama, and my mom didn't like the Baptists because the Baptists can believe that like you can just do whatever you want, and as long as you get up in front of the congregation and repent for your sins, that you're forgiven. And she didn't believe that that's the way it is, so she was more Methodist, and like, I mean, it was kind of culty if you ask me. But so yeah, I did grow up in church, and then whenever I was in middle school, I remember going to church. I elected to go to church, but I think that it was just more of a social thing. Did I get involved with it and like enjoy the services? Sure. I think that there's a lot of good that can come from church, and there are some really great messages that come from scripture, or not necessarily scripture, but in some ways, yeah, but just in the message that it can teach in some regard, sure. And I do believe that I think there is some positive as far as the type of community and belonging it can create in people, because that's important. It's important to feel like you have a sense of belonging and community for your psychological and basic needs. So I can understand religion, church, all of that from that aspect, and I participated in it in that regard. For a while, I was involved in church whenever I was in middle school, like I said, but I felt like in looking back and in my adult years, I've looked at that as being like, it was just more of like a social thing. I see my niece doing that now, and look, like, I hope that it is something like she is a good kid, and if that's what she wants to do, great. I'm not going to discourage her from that, but like, let her come to her own beliefs. What I can't get down with though is that forcing beliefs down your kids' throats and not allowing them their own ability to think for themselves, like in telling them that if they believe anything else then it's wrong. Like, that's where I draw the line, because we all deserve to come to our own conclusions and to use our environment and our experiences to shape how we arrive at those conclusions. So when I was in middle school, I was involved. I went on the Wednesdays with my friends. We went to youth group, we hung out, we did the things, whatever. And then in high school, definitely got away from it. Like, all I wanted to do whenever I got in high school was party. I remember somebody asked me when I was going into, it was my 8th grade summer, I was at the mall, and somebody asked me what I was looking forward to the most about going into high school, and I was like, the parties. What do you mean? Like, I can't wait to go to the parties. And that's how all of my high school drama even started, because I got invited to like upperclassmen parties, like senior parties, because I and my best friend at the time were the only 2 freshmen that were on varsity cheerleading. So we were just around the older people. We were the only 2 freshmen on varsity football. So like, we were out there with like juniors and seniors and things like that. So like, we were just naturally, that was more of our group. And like, the guys hung out with us, like, we were cute. We were, bubbly girls, like, whatever. So all I wanted to do when I was in high school was party. So I definitely got away from church and just wasn't super involved. But I wouldn't say that I was like anti-church or anything like that. I just didn't go. And I was also very busy. My mom was gone all the time. I had a serious boyfriend who I practically lived with. Like, I grew up real fast. My high school experience was quite different from most people's high school experience in all, what's the word I'm looking for right now? All facets. That's the word I'm looking for. All facets of it were pretty different from anybody's high school experience that I knew, or like a lot of people's childhood experience growing up. And then I went off to college, and I actually got my act together whenever I was in college and got back involved in church there for a little bit, because I was like partying, and then I was like, maybe I need to get in church and stop drinking. Anyhow, I'm going on this long-winded story to like give some background of the fact that like my perspective comes from like both sides of the coin. Like, and I think that's a little bit of why I can understand to some degree a little bit more than maybe some other people, and have more empathy and compassion for, difference of opinion. However, I think what gets me really fired up is the fact that when you're defending how you believe, people are just automatically jump to a political party. And that's where it just like gets me fired up, like that we've arrived at like your morals and your values as a human, like your character, are now classified as either being Republican or Democrat. And it's like we are using these political party affiliations as derogatory terms. Like, it's now derogatory in the way that some people say, like, oh, a Democrat. And I even remember my mom being that way. Like, it's always been this weaponized thing, like politics, religion. And that's where I just can't get behind it. Like, I'm just passionate about the things that I think are morally right. Basic human treatment for all people, no matter, like, just basic rights. So that's where I get so fired up, because I just cannot, like I said, I cannot wrap my mind around how people can't see that. Like, they can't just see that it can have nothing to do with being Republican and Democrat, and have everything to do with just someone's fucking character, man. And how somebody is raised. I think that is like a big part of it. Of, you have to remember that there's a lot of people that you're going to encounter in life, online, at work, in, all areas. You might date somebody whose family has a completely different belief system than you, that you have to kind of like get to know, tolerate, fit in with, whatever it is. Because you can't go around your whole life just being like, oh, well, fuck anybody who doesn't believe what I believe. That's not the right way to approach life. It's just not. That's a really shitty and ignorant way to approach life, because I think less intelligent people approach life that way, where it's like, no matter who they encounter, that if they have a difference of opinion, they just label that other person as stupid, dumb. Like, I will always have this argument that I do get into some arguments in comment sections online. I'm not going to lie. I get fired up, and I just like have to call stupid people out. That's actually something I was thinking about the other day, is that if you were to ask me what is probably like a complaint that people would have about me if they date me, or just in general, it's my mouth. And that could be the blessing and the curse, my friends, is my mouth. And what I mean by that is, like, I'm not my mouth in the way like I talk back, or like I talk to you or anything like that, like my significant other, my friends. It's in the way that I can't hold my tongue when somebody is being a fucking asshole. Man, female, old, young, I don't fucking care. If you're being an asshole, I just really struggle to keep my mouth shut. And it may at some point get someone I date or myself into a fight. I mean, I hope that it doesn't, but I will say that is something I struggle with. For instance, I was at the movies the other day with a friend, and there was this old man sitting next to me, and he was just being ridiculous. We went to go see The Housemaid, so spoiler alert if you haven't watched it. I'm about to give a couple of details that's not really going to give the movie away per se, but there's some details. So we were watching The Housemaid, and he was at the point where Sydney Sweeney was sleeping with the other lady's husband. He was just going slut. And then there's this part in the movie where something happens to her that's not a good thing to happen. And he was like, yeah, that's what you get, like, just calling her a slut, like, just being disgusting. And I just could not keep my mouth shut, and I was like, you're disgusting. And I literally looked at my friend, and I was like, I'm gonna get myself into a fight with this man. And as soon as the movie ended, I was like, we have to get out of here, because if he says one more thing, I'm gonna fucking lose my shit, because he was making comments the entire movie just that were so disgusting. Like, I'm just like, those kind of people just, and I know that arguing with those people is so fruitless. Like, I'm not going to change his mind, right? I get that. But there's just something in me that just is like fired up. I just want to protect the people and protect my feelings. Anyhow, that's what I mean. I just have a problem not speaking up. Honestly, I kind of lost my train of thought because I was starting to get fired up rethinking about that story. So I do remember I was talking about that my mouth would get me in trouble, but we're just going to keep going here of where my train of thought is leading me. So all this to say is that I've been on both sides. I grew up, I would say I grew up Republican. Like, I specifically remember whenever the Obama administration was up for presidency before he was elected, like that election year, I remember I did not like Obama. Like, I was definitely fed all of the shit that like my parents instilled in me, and I just like was regurgitating those things. And then that's why my mom says that I went to college and became a liberal, which, like, I, again, don't classify myself. I would say that I have like pretty liberal beliefs as far as socially. Like, I don't give a shit what gender you want to be. I don't give a shit who you want to marry. I don't give a shit. Like, I don't care why I don't understand why anybody cares about that. But I do still hold my stance of like, but we shouldn't be pushing things down people's throats, right? Like, let people come to their own conclusions, like let people have their own free thought, let people ask questions, like all that kind of stuff. That's where I still stand. Like, I don't believe that my parents should have ever pushed Republican stuff, and like I will say that I had to unlearn even some racist ways of thinking, because that's what I grew up around. It's what I grew up knowing, and I had to educate myself. I'm like, oh, that's actually like not at all what was going on. You know, I grew up watching Cops with my dad, and like, yeah, if you were watching Cops, they specifically made that show back then to like make black people out to look like thugs and criminals. Like, even like there's just so much information that you can learn in just reading and educating yourself. So yeah, I guess if, you know, going off to college and getting educated is what radicalized me and made me more like liberal than I was prior. Sure, I do believe that, you know, education is important. You don't have to go to college to educate yourself, but just like, yeah, learning some history, you know, because that wasn't something that I was really interested in. And it's interesting because I love reading and watching documentaries, but I just never paid attention to history whenever I was in school. Like, really, I didn't pay attention to a whole lot of stuff. I feel like school, in a way, kind of came easy to me. Like math, science, English, like all came very easy to me. I would say geography, couldn't tell you, like, don't remember anything. I think geography and history was just like the piece that like I was never really interested in it growing up. So like I can't recall anything, but I do enjoy learning things. So in my adult years, I've been educating myself more on just like the history of things and things that I don't know about. And there have just been some certain pieces of literature that I've read that have really shifted my perspective and, yeah, I guess radicalized me. So that's where I think I have a good perspective, is that I've been on both. And I even went to the University of Alabama. And sometimes I'm sure like it's probably a little shocking for me to have some of the stances and beliefs that I do, being that I have grown up mostly in the South. You know, I was born in California. We lived there for a couple of years. My dad had a corporate job at the time that was growing, and so they transferred us to Philadelphia. We lived there for a couple of years, and then we moved to Atlanta. And then pretty much most of my childhood, I grew up in Georgia and moving kind of around Georgia. Mostly we were in, what is that, southwest, south? I don't know geography. I know that we lived about 25 minutes south of Atlanta. But I also lived in North Georgia. Like, I moved around Georgia a good bit, and then I landed at the University of Alabama. And so how did I even end up at the University of Alabama? Because this is a funny story. So Alabama was not something that was like in my family. Like, nobody talks about Alabama when I was growing up. So me going there was kind of a random choice. And sometimes when I tell people that I went to Alabama, in knowing me in my adulthood, they're like a little surprised, because they're like, oh, Alabama, you know, they make like cousin jokes and, you know, all kinds of the Alabama jokes, and like warranted, man. Like, Alabama, I will say Roll Tide forever. That is my alma mater. And I had a fantastic college experience. I can't speak to what Alabama is like now that I've been gone for so long. But when I was in school there, I had a really great time, got a great education. And for the most part, I was there for the dance department. That's primarily what I went there for. But the reason I even looked into Alabama was, I shit you not, because I met a group of guys who went to the University of Alabama when I was a freshman in high school on spring break in Panama City, Florida. This was back when Panama City, I don't know if they still do this for spring break, but when we used to go to spring break in Panama City, they used to have like these big, like almost kind of like MTV parties, where like these DJs and like stuff would come out. They would have these stages. They would do bikini contests. They would do wet t-shirt contests. We would be funneling beer. Like, I mean, it was a fucking like Girls Gone Wild party. It was so fun. And I fucking love that shit. I told you, when I was going into high school, all I wanted to do was party. And boy, did I party. I partied so much. My first 3 years of high school, I almost didn't graduate. That is not a lie. I ended up having to go to summer school. I actually couldn't get into the University of Alabama my first year because my GPA was too bad. Because like I said, school was always just like not a challenge for me. I was always in like upper level classes, but then once I got to high school and I didn't really have any like parental supervision, I just didn't fucking care. I was bored. All I cared about was like going to dance and partying. And yeah, I just didn't give a shit. But yeah, me and one of my girlfriends that I danced with at the time, we went to Panama City for spring break, met this group of guys who were going to the University of Alabama, and one of the guys was so funny. He had this trombone, and this is how like all of it even started, because he was going down the beach with his trombone. He was in the Alabama band, in the $1 Million Band, so he brought his trombone to the beach and was fucking playing Move Bitch Get Out the Way with his trombone down the beach, and we just all ended up, I don't even remember how we hit it off and like all started hanging out, but we hung out with those guys for like pretty much the whole time. Like went to no, did not sleep with them. I did make out with one of them, but did not sleep with them. So don't worry. Nobody was committing statutory rape. The only thing that happened was making out on both of our accounts. But we met these guys and just had the fucking time of our life. I mean, they were college guys. They knew how to party like college guys. They're like frat boys and guys in the Alabama band. We had the fucking time of our life. We just drank with these guys, hung out on the beach with these guys, like whatever, flirted with these guys, made out with these guys. Not all of the guys. Like me, I had one guy that I hit it off with most, and she had one guy that she hit it off with most. Anyhow, but super fucking young. They had no idea until years later, and they're like, wait, you should be in in college right now. I'm like, so by the way, we fucking lied to your asses by like 3 years. So by that impression, I was just sold. I was sold on the University of Alabama. And something about me is that once I get my mindset on something, it is very hard to shift me from just going after that. Like once I was like, I'm going to the University of Alabama, that was what I was going to do. And so obviously I was pretty devastated when the consequences of my actions came back to bite me in the ass, because I would skip school and just like not give a fuck, get super high before school, and just like I just didn't fucking care. I was just like whatever. Again, I think that had to do something with just the way that I grew up, and I had really no supervision whenever I was in high school, especially once we moved across town. And I was a junior and driving. My mom was working a job where she had to travel a lot for work. I had a boyfriend at the time. We practically lived together. So like just very, very different. So, and my boyfriend at the time was also much older than I, well, not much older, but I mean, yeah, he was like 4 years older than me. So like out of high school. So I was just always hanging out with older people. And so I think my just vision about school was a little bit different. Like school was more social for me. And also I just had a shitty high school experience my first couple of years until I got to my third high school and basically reinvented myself. So high school for me was just not it. And then my senior year of high school, I like got my shit together and made straight A's, exempted all my finals, because they were just like, look, like you're not going to graduate or get into college. Like at this point, like you're probably not going to get into Alabama, and you're going to have to go to community college. And that fucking woke me up. I had to miss dance nationals to go to summer school, and then I couldn't get into Alabama the first year. So I fucking got my shit together. I applied myself. Again, like I said, if I applied myself, it'd be fine. Made straight A's pretty much. I think I made like 1B, but exempted all of my finals and graduated, whatever. And then went to community college, had a great GPA. Finally, my sophomore year, I transferred into the University of Alabama. So I made that happen. And so that's how I ended up at Alabama. It's not because I like believe in Alabama politics or Alabama values or anything. It was literally because I met a group of guys on the beach my freshman year of spring break. And one of the guys was playing Move Bitch Get Out the Way with his trombone. So that's how I ended up there, and Roll Tide forever. And then after college, moving to New York City, I felt like I finally was around people that I could be fully myself, because I feel like that was also something that I really struggled with whenever I was in just growing up, really, is that I felt like there were very few people that I could actually be myself around without a whole lot of judgment, whether it was because of like, I've always been pretty unfiltered. I've always been fiery. I've always had this, and like, yeah, I think that that's always kind of given me some sort of like stigma with certain people, because a lot of people are reserved, especially in the South, and there's just a lot of stigma around the things that you should and shouldn't talk about. So, being open about talking about sex makes you be labeled as a whore, be like interested in understanding it, like, or even just being like, I like to make out, or not believing in waiting until marriage and like enjoying partying, like people's parents definitely labeled me as like the troublemaker because I was known to party or whatever, and then, you know, be late to school. Like, again, I was just kind of like always a little bit outspoken and a little bit rebellious in that way, but never maliciously. I was always very good intended and good hearted. It's just like I've always been kind of boisterous and fiery and passionate. So yeah, that can definitely get you a bit of a bad rap and a bad reputation to some degree, especially living in the South. So moving to New York City was really, I felt like, the first time that I was around people that I felt like I could let loose and nobody was judging me, because I feel like for a lot of my life too, I've carried a lot of shame. That's actually something I talk a lot about in therapy whenever I was seeing my last therapist. Was I shame myself a lot, like even in relationships and dating, when there's an energy shift or like I'm just starting to feel like anxious, my brain and my body immediately goes to, what did I do wrong, or what could I have done better, instead of it just letting it be grounded in land that like it might not and likely has nothing to do with me at all. Like I've just always been that way. Like, did I say something wrong? Did I do something wrong? So I think of just like I've always been aware of, or like living in a place where you should be a little bit more filtered in things. It makes you feel a little bit of shame whenever you do something or say something, or you start judging yourself, or you feel shameful of like, oh, well, I shouldn't be enjoying this because this is against the rules. And like, you know, it's like even going back to thinking about how people like masturbation, right? Like I didn't masturbate until I was in college, because, and like I had a roommate who gave me a vibrator as a gag gift. That's how I started masturbating, because I carried so much shame. I thought that was like gross. You don't do that. That's shameful, you know? And I think that that's just, you know, so growing up in the South, it can create a lot of shame for that kind of stuff. So moving to New York was like the first time again that I felt like I just had this group of people that I was like, oh, this is allowed. That's when I started experimenting. You know, I did Molly for the first time when I lived in New York. Like I just started kind of opening up a little bit and not feeling so bad about it. I think that that's also why I've never been really wired for casual sex. And I don't, not that I like want to be wired for casual sex, but it has been something that I've brought up a lot, or that I have to like work through a lot, is that I tend to be more wired for emotional intimacy whenever sex is connected to it. I really struggle with casual sex. I'm just not wired for it. That's just not, but I do also think that that is tied to how I was raised and how sex was presented to me as I was growing up. It was never just this like free flowing conversation. So in my adulthood, that's why I've been like a little bit more open, because it's like, it's this really taboo thing, especially if you grew up in the South. And so all that to say is that, you know, in having grown up in the South and gone to such a conservative school and all of that kind of stuff, being around all of those people, I can see both sides of the coin. And I think that's also what just like makes me feel like I could never, outside of living in New Orleans, live in the South. Like the moment that I feel like I don't want to be in New Orleans again, I cannot live in another Southern state. There's just no way. Like I can't think of one Southern state where I'm like, oh yeah, I've had a great experience with the people there. Like, and I've moved around a good bit, right? And my favorite places that I have lived have been New Orleans and New York City. And the things that I have loved the most about those two cities is the culture. And most of the culture from those two cities comes from brown people and like immigrants or black people. You know, like I have lived in towns where it's mostly white people. And what I can tell you is they're boring as fuck and there's nothing special. Like the only good thing they have is like good shopping malls. The two places that I've had the best food, culture, nightlife, just everything has been New Orleans and New York City, and it's because of the brown people. So I just could not live somewhere where they believe that like white elitists, you know, like fuck you if you think that segregation isn't still a mindset for a lot of people. Like they still believe, not segregation, but like just, yeah, I mean, I think that if some people had their way, they would prefer for it to still be in place. Yeah, racism is just like still very alive and well, especially in the South. And that's my problem. I was referring to it earlier of like, I can't keep my fucking mouth shut, and I can't be around so many people who have such just poor views on humanity and race and all of that kind of shit, and they're just fucking ignorant. And so I just, at the moment that New Orleans isn't for me, like I gotta head for the hills somewhere, because ain't no way I'm gonna survive in the South. I'm gonna end up in a fight, I'm gonna end up in jail, I'm gonna oh, but anyway, definitely gonna get myself a cocktail after this. Anyways, I'm craving a margarita. Sunday fun day. What the fuck? Fuck it. I also need to clean my house. I feel like I've been procrastinating all this stuff because I haven't been able to fucking focus this week after fucking Renee Good got shot in the face. I feel like my New Year's started off so good. I went to bed early on New Year's Eve. I got up early. I've been like, got my shit together. It was like on a roll, feeling mentally good, all this. And then bam, anxiety and just like overload of like just not being able to understand the world and the cruelty that's going on in the world. And you know what? I know a lot of people talk about like don't speak up, but I'm just that kind of person. I've reached that point where I can't stay silent anymore. And if people are going to dislike me, unfollow me, not support me, like whatever that is, if me denouncing racism and domestic terrorism that is happening in the United States right now, a woman just got shot, murdered, she got shot in the face twice through the side of her window, not because his life was in. If you are believing that man was claiming self-defense, you're just believing the narrative that this terrorist party is trying to shove down. Like, if you're so blind to what is going on, this is not normal. This is like fucking Nazi regime. And so like, I don't care. I'm to the point, and this is not political. I'm not sitting here saying I support the left or I support the right. I'm saying that ICE, whatever this fucking made up shit that is right now, because this is not what the border patrol is. If they're patrolling the border, then why the fuck are they not at the border? They're in the fucking middle of Minneapolis, you know, and just like the middle of fucking all these states, going door to door, car to car, to people who are fucking brown. Like, if this comes to bite me in the ass, then so be it, because I will denounce racism every fucking day from the top of my lungs if that's what I have to do to just shout my opinion on this, because I can't stay silent. I can't see something like that on the internet and not be upset about it. And if you can, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, how can you see that and not feel something? And the fact that people are then like, oh, well, it's the fucking Democrats, it's the fucking Republicans. Like, no, this is just evil. This is just cruel. And this is just downright fucking, racist. And then people are like, well, she was white. Yeah, but that's not the point here. The whole point of her even being out there is the fact that this group is out there terrorizing neighborhoods and terrorizing the brown people in these neighborhoods. And so their neighbors are standing up for them. The white people who aren't the ones who are being targeted for this are standing up. That's like your community. Stand with your neighbor. That's what she was doing. So this argument of, oh, well, she was not brown, but she was defending the brown. That's the whole reason she was out there. And the whole reason that ICE was out there in the first place. Like, it's just, I can't stay silent with this. And, you know, the people who have the argument of like, oh, well, she should have just complied and she wouldn't have gotten shot in the face. That's the same argument as somebody saying, oh, well, she just shouldn't make her husband angry and he wouldn't beat her. Like, that just shows me too that you clearly don't understand the side of like domestic violence and the giant problem that is domestic violence in the world against women. You know, the fact that there are men in all around the world, not just in America, who can just get away with fucking beating and murdering and raping women and having zero consequence because, oh, she shouldn't have worn something so slutty. She shouldn't have pissed him off. She shouldn't have, you know, enticed him and made him think that she wanted him. It's disgusting that it's always, oh, well, she should have just complied and she wouldn't have gotten raped. She should have just worn something different. She shouldn't have had her tits out. She shouldn't have had on so much makeup. She shouldn't have done this. She shouldn't have done that. When is it ever going to fucking end? Now a woman's dead. We've watched her get murdered, and this man is now getting complete immunity. Like, J.D. Vance came on national television and stated that this man, under their administration, would have absolute immunity. That's fucking dangerous. And if you're not scared by that, what the like, you should, like, I have just been like, this is insane. Like, that's the part of it too where I'm like, this is scary, that they can literally be like, yeah, we can murder people in the middle of the fucking street, convince people that it was self-defense, and enough people, because they just support us and they support the message that we're pushing, will just blindly say, whoop, I didn't see her get shot. I saw her try to run over a cop even though he was on the side of her vehicle. Like, The first thing I want to say is that if you have family members who have completely opposite beliefs of you, I think that there's a lot of out there where it's like, you don't have to stay family, like blood isn't always stronger when it's like comes to like if they voted for Trump. I actually think it's really immature if you just automatically say, well, if you voted for Trump, then I'm cutting you out of my life. Or vice versa. If you like are just like saying, oh, well, there's a political party you voted for, then like, fuck you, I can't have a relationship with you. That is so elementary, and I just think that that's so ignorant and like just a little bit like unintelligent. And I think that that's a really shallow point of view. So that's my first opinion on that. I think that you can put certain boundaries in place. Like, for example, whenever I go home in the future, no Fox News. None. I don't want to hear it. It is the most toxic thing I have ever seen on a news channel. Like, it's just literal garbage. And that's coming from somebody who that's all I used to believe in as a news source until I was educated. And then I realized, oh, they're just full of shit and they say whatever they want. And again, they demoralize women in saying things like she had pronouns in her profile. I guess you can't be a lesbian and a Republican because that like I don't know, it's just wild. So yeah, I think that that's something you could do. There's certain boundaries that you can say, okay, we aren't going to have any political conversations and we're going to have a safe word. So when things come up at the dinner table in conversation where things can potentially get escalated, because this is where our difference opinion comes in when it comes to politics or anything like that, we are going to need a word that I can say, that you can say, to where it's literally like conversation stops, no questions asked. We don't want to escalate because we know if we continue, it's just not going to be good for anybody. So I think that there are just things like that you can do. Also, you don't have to stay at their house. You can elect to get a hotel room if it's less stressful for you to do that. You can have different sleeping arrangements, you can limit the time that you're there. You could say, I'm going to spend time with you, but I'm going to limit it because it seems that when we overextend our time together, it tends to escalate. There tends to be more drama. So I would prefer, if when I come in town, maybe we spend, out of my 4 days there, we spend 2 of them together. They're planned. Like, it's not just this constant around each other. Like, there are just certain boundaries that you can put in place with your family, with people that you have relationships with, that doesn't look like completely cutting them out. On social media, you can just mute these people. You don't have to block them. You don't have to unfollow them. You don't have to do this. You can just mute their content. I mean, I guess like if you're not going to consume their content, what's the point of being friends with them? And if that's how you feel, then sure, go for it. But if it's also going to cause you more flack and like more drama and more just like grief than it's worth, like if your, Aunt Susan is going to be like, your daughter, blocked me and blah, 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 then like, you know what, just say your piece if you need to, and just quietly mute their content and just, leave out the back door. You do the old Irish goodbye without them knowing via social media. You just mute their shit. There are ways to just avoid the constant flood of shit being shown to you that escalate you. And this is me giving my own self this advice. Like this past week, I've definitely had to mute some folks, and I've gotten into some arguments with distant family members over some of my opinions. And look, if you're going to come at me because I'm denouncing racism and I just believe that what's happened this week is disgusting and it's heavy and I don't believe that it's right on either side, then so be it. I'm happy to argue with you. But then I'm just going to mute you and I'm just going to quietly disengage in the situation. I don't need to continue engaging. I don't need to listen to what you have to say. I can just remove myself from the situation. And that's kind of what you can do. If these people aren't like your close family, you can remove yourself. And like, I haven't seen these people in like 15 years, like, what do I care? And then as far as your content consumption, this is something I've talked about on a previous episode in relation to my eating disorder. I had to really cleanse my timeline of what kind of media and what kind of content was being pushed to me, not only within my eating disorder stuff, but again, like I was mentioning, when all this stuff was happening with COVID and everything just politically was escalating and it was just so stressful and I couldn't handle it. I had to filter what was coming through. I used to wake up every day and just listen to NPR while I was brushing my teeth, like, the 10-minute episode, like a morning episode thing. But Yeah, I had to just start filtering out. Okay, I have to stop listening to that because I can't keep listening to everything be so negative and all of this crazy shit going on in the world. Like, we are just not meant to be this. It's great that we can be this informed, and I think that the internet can be this really beautiful thing of like, yeah, now like they can't hide all of the evil corrupt shit that's going on because everybody has cameras, everybody has cell phones, like everybody's recording all the time, so like they can't get away with all the crazy shit, or apparently they fucking can, because somebody can literally video record a woman being murdered in the fucking street and they can just like self-defense. I'm more scared to go to the fucking Walmart on Chapatulas in New Orleans than I am of a car moving 3 miles per hour. Anyway, you got to filter out what's being fed to you. You know, that goes with anything. If something is feeding anxious thought, it's feeding your anxiety, you've got to cut it out. You know, this goes in relationships. This is why no contact is so important. You know, you always want closure. You always want this. And you're like, oh, well, I don't want to unfriend them or unfollow them or block them. Okay, well, then you've got to either, if you're not disciplined enough to not visit their profile, all you're doing is making it worse for yourself. Like, you have to remove the trigger from your own life. You're responsible for that. And so if, you know, drunk texting your ex is a problem for you, you have to delete the phone number. You can't just be like, oh, well, you know, take my phone when I'm drunk. No, you have to take the action. This is on you. You have to delete the contact. And if you memorize the number, then set up an app where it like doesn't let you do it. I don't know. Like, there's ways to do it. It's the same thing with the content that you consume. If the content that you're consuming is constant news related and it's just a flood of all of the bad shit that's going on, you need to stop following that and decide what you consume to stay informed, because a lot of the shit that we see online isn't even completely informed. Like, there have been stuff where like I've clicked on it and I'm like, this isn't even fucking, this is AI. Like, this isn't even right. So find resources that are actual resources to stay informed and decide how you consume those versus those feeding you. You can limit those things. Maybe limit your screen time. You know, anything that is feeding your anxieties, and this isn't just politically for what's going on in the world. This is just a blanket statement. Anything that's feeding that, you got to get rid of it. You got to get it out. It's like the easiest way that, you know, whenever you meet with a dietitian or anything that they're going to say, the easiest way to stop snacking is to not have the snacks in the house. Like, it's literally the easiest way. Is if it's not available, then you won't have it there. It's like there's literal studies that have been shown that when you have like candy or snacks on your counter visible to you, you're more inclined to think about them than if you were to put them away in your pantry. There's times where like I open my pantry, I'm like, oh fuck, I forgot about that I had these Sour Patch watermelon, because it's away in my pantry. I'm not constantly seeing it every time I walk by the counter. So you're in charge of how everything in your life shows up for you. So just remember that. Just remember that you have the ability to monitor, to set those types of boundaries for yourself. And I kind of hate that word. I'm starting to hate that word boundaries, because I feel like it's so overused and just like, ugh, like everything now where it's like self-care, boundaries, I'm triggered, it's narcissism. It's just like, these were all really good things and are very valid things, but they're just so overused, and I feel like so many people don't actually know what they fucking mean. So sorry if the word boundaries triggers you the way that it triggers me. I'm going to think of a different word. You can put some walls in place from what you feed yourself. All right, y'all. Well, I hope that the world gets, I don't know what to think right now. I hope that you take care of yourself. I hope that you give yourself some grace. I hope that you take some of this advice, and when you notice yourself feeling anxious, feeling overwhelmed, that you do something that makes you feel grounded. Go for a walk, call a friend, do something that, you know, that makes you feel like you can actually let those anxious thoughts go. Do something creative. I find that when I let my creative juices flow, whether it's painting, coloring, drawing, like, I don't draw. Why did I even say that? I don't fucking draw. I do paint sometimes, but not anything like crazy, but like coloring is great. I think that's why I loved painting my walls. Like, if this were my place, I would paint the whole fucking thing, because I fucking love changing my walls and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not going to paint all of my place back. My walls, I have like 13-foot ceilings, so that's not, except for in here. So that's absolutely not going to happen. But yeah, back to what I was saying. Take care of yourself, you guys. The world is a very heavy place. Put some good strategies in place. I'm avoiding the word boundaries for how you can keep your cortisol levels and your stress management and your anxiety at a manageable level. Sending all of you love. As always, thank you so much for listening. Please, please, please give me a like, give me a follow, give me a subscribe, leave me a comment. Tell me what you would like to hear. Let me know what you thought. You can find me on socials, on Instagram and on TikTok at Sharra Coley. That's SharraColey. I'm going to go get myself a fucking margarita because it's still happy hour, and I love that they still do happy hour on Sundays. So giddy up, y'all. Do whatever you need to do to get through. That's my message to you. Until next time, be good now, you hear? Meow.